The masked figures in the arena screamed in excitement. Their fists raised as foam and spit was practically flowing out of their mouths. They had come here for revelry in this most brutal of sports. The destruction of one's fellow man, death meaning nothing here but a mere setback for those who enlisted in this show of debauchery. For another being will soon replace that of which now rots within the floorboards. The circus welcomed ladies and gentlemen alike to the greatest show of a lifetime, a truly amazing cast of characters for their pleasure tonight. That was what had been promised to the demons who had accepted this tempting invitation. Your gaze shifted over the many figures. Demons of all shapes and sizes, masked to hide their identities. Though you could tell which one of them was your master. He was the only one not screaming, choosing to only stare daggers at you. You weren't sure what his problem was. You had already 2 victories today. Your gaze shifted to the gate out of which your opponents came. The announcer, a demoness with quite the rack, with a heavy spiky metal helmet that covered her entire face, minus her mouth and one eye. She slammed a large hammer on her announcer desk to hype up the masses. It isn't often we get a new member who wants to immediately put his beloved contractors on the line. But that's what we enjoy here in the Butcher's Circus, don't we, my dear guests? The masses roared. Will our new arrival prove to be a fine addition to our card, or will he go home with one less soul on his list? Let's find out. God, what a woman. A loud gong echoed as the gate opened. I present to you the little imp that could, Preminger! From the gate, he stepped forward. Blood-red skin, dressed in a black suit, yellow eyes, and short white hair. Hands folded behind his back. Laughter erupted. Laughter which stopped momentarily after someone had thrown a tomato at the imp. As when it was just mere inches away from his face, the fruit stopped mid-air, plopping onto the ground with zero fanfare. While only a minor proof of his power, it was still enough, and the ocean of laughter had a few claps put within. Preminger, the demon butler, stopped in the middle of the arena, with a professional, neutral expression. Face focused entirely on you. But yet his head was held high, and you gulped. You didn't like this. Hell was a place that reveled in sin. After all, there were practically no long-term consequences for it. A soul was damned to spend eternity here, their bodies regenerating, only eating and drinking for fun. Well, sometimes there were hunger pangs, but still. And sleeping around didn't have any consequences either. Well, maybe a scorned lover or 2. Nevertheless, humans always thirsted for just a little more excitement. And that was true even in hell. And that's where the garden came in. A highly secure and controlled organization that held events of sin. It wasn't that the things that happened under the garden's eyes was anything rare in hell, but people came for the spectacle and the exclusivity. One of the garden's primary attractions, the Butcher's Circus, was a combat arena challenge, where dealmakers could use their contracted demons to fight each other. The winner would get the loser's contract and a portion of betting earnings. It was a matter of pride for most dealmakers who enlisted. And of course, the Butcher's Circus wasn't the only entertainment the garden offered. It was just the one that was the most popular and important for their business. You had been sent here to fight for your master, who after he learned of the circus dedicated his life in hell to acquire fighters and train them. Not just something he did out of boredom, and you would immediately stop doing this the moment it wasn't fun anymore. But for now, this had become your life, and the life of anyone who was under contract of him. You were a tall, quite muscular demoness. Your name was Mandala. It was fitting, as you were a primary color demon. Your demon race was widely considered predators, since your kind had the disturbing ability to cause hallucinations that made it easy for your kin to hunt other demons through an oil that was produced from glands under your fingernails. You had red, rough skin with a blue stripe pattern on your arms and legs, neon yellow hair that hung down just past your shoulders, and entirely white glowing eyes. What used to be a beautiful slender body due to your countless fights in the circus had become muscular and covered in thick scars. You were dressed in a simple leather bikini to show off your body to the crowd. Your master loved it when you bled, as it was always a surprise which of the 3 primary colors you were bleeding today. Preminger looked at you, bowing deeply and respectfully. "I apologize, my lady, for what is about to happen to you." You raised an eyebrow skeptically. "Yeah, right. As if an imp could take you down." You rushed forward. You had only been given a one-handed gladius to fight this time, and you swung the weapon at the imp. Though, as the blade cut through him, it was like he was mist. It left no wounds, not even his clothes were damaged. Confused, you looked at your blood-covered weapon. "I must admit that was a nice swing. It surely would have cut me in half if you were stronger. I shall allow you a few more strikes. For the crowd." Angrily, your right eye twitched. You stepped forward. This time your attack was dodged by him teleporting behind you. Entirely without sound or fanfare, he just blinked. Normal demons at least poofed or made a noise. Your heart raced as you took a step back. Preminger just nodded. "Go on," he said. You looked up at the crowd. They were uncharacteristically quiet, though you could see their silhouettes. They were screaming, waving their arms. Why couldn't you hear them? It was then that you noticed the slight distortion on the sandy ground, like asphalt had been cooked in the sun for too long. Realizing it was useless, you threw away your weapon and growled, sprinting forward on all fours like a wild beast, clasping your claws around his head, your nails penetrating the skin of the imp's face, trying to twist his little neck. But even though you were injecting your poison into him, which should loosen him up as your hallucinations hit, no matter how hard you tried, he would not budge. A drop of sweat rolled into your eye, and you had to blink, which you used to teleport again. You looked around. Even the audience didn't seem to find him, until you looked straight up. He was standing on the ceiling, looking down, or, well, up at you, as if gravity had entirely reversed. What the... You didn't know what was worse. The eerie silence that seemingly only you was hearing, or, well, not hearing, or the fact that he was playing with you. And then you saw it. It was less than a second. A mere flash. A vision. What you saw was horrifying. As in the place of the imp, you saw a creepy yellow figure that was indescribable. But the vision was gone so fast you couldn't make out anything more. Preminger smirked. The first time his face moved during this entire fight. He raised a hand and snapped his fingers. Immediately, countless wounds opened on your body, your blood spewing out of countless holes on your skin, as if hundreds of tiny demons simultaneously started stabbing you. The pain was great, but you managed to just barely stand on shivering legs. You almost blacked out. The imp then blinked himself behind you. Scared for your continued existence, you turned around.
Very good. You're still standing, mistress,
he said curiously, clapping his hands mockingly.
Perhaps, though I'm just a little rusty. Alas, I shall give you,
he raised a finger, using it to tap his nose,
one more hit for surviving for so long.
You were breathing heavily out of your mouth, turning your hand into a fist. You swung, hitting Preminger on the right side of his face. You saw his red skin jitter at the impact, but it was as if his bones were made out of steel. You could feel your fingers break. You screamed in pain, going down on one knee, holding your shattered hand. The imp took a step forward. Scared and shivering, you looked up at him, his yellow eyes making you even more afraid. Slowly he raised his right hand and placed a finger on your forehead. You could feel his sharp claw digging at your skin. And then he pushed forward, his long claw cutting through your skin, skull, and brain like it was a hot knife through butter. For a moment you felt a pain so powerful you had never felt before, and then, at an instant, everything was black. And so, you had died. And therefore, lost. You awoke an hour later, your brain fully regenerated, lying on something decently soft. Immediately you opened your eyes and sat up. "Rise and shine," said an unfamiliar voice. You looked around yourself with a haunted expression. What's going on? You felt like you had been cheated. You found yourself inside of a big limousine. The padding was a beautiful magenta color. There was a small bar with a few drinks, but most interesting of all was that the windows were blackened. Opposite to the seat you had been lying on sat a well-dressed demon. He looked familiar. You furrowed your brows. Clearly he was the guy who had owned the soul of that imp. It was only a thing making sense. Wait a second. Your face turned into a frightful visage, pointing a finger at the guy's smug face. You knew this guy. You had seen him before. And you shouted, "You're Satan!" The man tilted his head, amused. "It's Lucifer." "Same thing!" The fallen angel didn't feel like going into the semantics of this. Wait. My soul is now literally owned by Satan? Lucifer. You slammed your hands against your head. Well, you already were in hell. Not like anything worse could happen to your soul. Lucifer smiled. Your expression was adorable, especially in juxtaposition with that she-beast body of yours. Well, anyways, I bet you're wondering what happened. Actually, no. He blinked. What? I lost? I have lost my soul contract? Now, Satan has it. Satan has my soul. Oh God, if my mom knew that, she'd flip. You looked around. Come to think of it, where was that imp? Well, yeah, that is the basic gist of it. Lucifer was a little disappointed. So, what do you have me do now that you're my master? What the hell could you do as the servant of Satan? Now that you said it out loud, like... Though, now that you thought about it, that did sound metal as fuck. The front window looking into the driver's cabin went down.
It is simple, mistress. You will be assisting me in my work.
You squeaked, jumping back as you saw Preminger. He was driving. Prim, we both know you can handle everything in the castle alone. The imp's eyes flashed in the rear-view mirror. Causing you to feel something cold to run down your back. I mean, I'm more of a fighter than a cleaner. You chuckled awkwardly, and the two men looked at each other through the mirror in a way that said, "Really?" Question mark. Hey, stop giving each other that look. You two are on a whole other level. What possibly could you mean? Preminger is just an imp. Was Lucifer really not aware of the crazy shit Preminger just did in the arena? Come to think of it, did he even watch? You would have remembered a guest with a flamboyant white outfit like that, even with his face covered by that iron mask. You didn't see it? Lucifer shrugged. I mean, I was certain Prim would win. He's really one hell of a butler, you know. Right. Your gaze shifted to Prim, whose eyes narrowed as he noticed your gaze. Immediately turned away from him. You felt like you wouldn't be doing much assisting in taking care of the castle. An assumption you were proven right with. After the limousine stopped in front of Lucifer's castle, you were ordered to follow Prim into the servants' quarters. To none of your surprise, there were only 2 beds. In a very large hall that indicated there did have indeed been many servants working in this castle. As you looked around the room, you heard Preminger thinking out loud.
I doubt after today you're excited to share a room with me.
You gulped loud enough for him to hear, which caused Prim to nod slightly.
Very well.
He snapped his fingers, causing the second bed to instantly vanish. How was he doing that? Normally, teleportation spells were opening rifts or tears in time and space, creating big effects, loud noises, poofs and puffs, but this instantaneousness of the teleportations, it was making you uncomfortable.
Please, follow me to the guest rooms.
Slowly you walked behind Preminger, his thin black tail swinging left to right.
Sire doesn't have many guests these days. He's quite often on his lonesome, ever since his lovely daughter moved out.
Preminger opened the door leading into one of the guest rooms.
You should be residing here, Miss...
He raised an eyebrow questioningly at you. Mandala. He inhaled through his mouth, but then swallowed a mocking comment.
Very well, mistress. Clothes will be given to you. For now, I recommend a cleansing shower. You reek of the circus.
He pointed at a blue door in your room that led to its bathroom.
And your presence will be expected at dinner at precisely 6 p.m. I will be picking you up a little earlier so you can help me in the kitchen.
Sure thing, Prim. The imp glared at you, making you jump. Yes, sir, Mr. Preminger, sir. But as you stepped out of the shower half an hour later, you were faced with a dresser filled with French-made outfits. Your face glowed out of embarrassment. At least they weren't skimpy. Though as you put the biggest sized one on, not only was the dress still half too short, it was also way too tight around the chest. You kinda wanted to cry. You'd take your leather bikini over this. At least it didn't make you feel like you were stuck inside of a sausage skin. Ugh, you sighed. Regardless of that, you sat down on what was your bed now, your attention turning to a big black slab hanging on the wall. And after seeing a small light on it blink, you realized it was a flat-screen TV. Quite big too. With a dumb smile, you began searching the room for a remote, only to be begrudgingly turn it on with the button on its side. You would ask Preminger for one, but not only did you not know where he was right now, you also definitely didn't want to ask him at all. You were kinda scared of him. At around 5:50 p.m., Preminger returned, showing you where the dining room and kitchen were located. The kitchen itself was beautiful and clean. God Ramsay would be proud. Knives, ladles, pots, they all were floating around as if invisible tentacles were carrying them around the room. It looked a bit like a Disney movie, though a little cursed as well. A decently sized collection of tasty meals was already placed on a cart with wheels. And at exactly 6 p.m. sharp, you took the handles of the cart in your hands, pushing it into the dining room. You forced a smile as you approached Lucifer, whose eyes moved from the food to you. It made you blush. Preminger didn't even grace you with a single look at you once this entire time. So having someone actually look at you while wearing this outfit made you instantly feel embarrassed. Placing the food on the large table Lucifer was sitting at, he couldn't help but only focus on you. And he inhaled sharply through his nose as he watched you easily pick up the tray with a giant roasted pig on it and place it on the middle of the table. Come to think of it, that was actually quite a lot of food. You took an impressed step back, and then made a forced bow. Lucifer, meanwhile, leaned back. So, Mandala, he said in a forced, casual tone. Have you eaten yet? You gulped. Actually, no. As if on cue, your stomach grumbled. Lucifer smiled, and even though he was still in the kitchen, so did Prim. After all, he didn't want some random former gladiator screwing with his perfectly clean castle. Besides, Lucifer had divorced with Lilith 7 years ago. He earned himself a new partner. Besides, Lucifer divorced Lilith 7 years ago. He should get a new partner. Plus, that was exactly what that ego-inflated blonde bimbo needed as a reality check. Him moving on. And who better to do that than you? After all, Lucifer loved women who could kick his ass. And who better to do that than a woman who was even taller than Lilith? So, Lucifer said, his mouth full of meat. It's actually a funny story how we even got into that circus. Looking up from your food, you looked at him. Is it? Yeah, Lucifer gulped down his bite. You see, I get constantly hundreds of invites from various demons who think they're worth my time. The thing is, sometimes these invites are actually important. I usually have Prim sort them through. Lucifer took a sip from his wine glass before continuing. So an invitation by the garden was kinda on the shit list. They tried to get me into Eden before, but After you experience the real Eden, a copy just doesn't compare. Besides, why would I be interested in some hell zoo? You gulped loudly. The Garden's Eden wasn't a zoo. It was more sort of anything goes, of sort of dungeon, catering to the most depraved of desires. As a matter of fact, the Garden had multiple capture squads that for the right price would try and kidnap anyone for a client to have fun with in Eden. And the anyone in their tagline, "We can allow you to do whatever you want with anyone you want," was written on all caps. In a way, you are glad Lucifer didn't know. You yourself had never seen the inside of Eden. The Garden was already exclusive, and Eden was the exclusive of the exclusive. Now, when we arrived, we were given these iron masks. And sure, kinda gaudy, but apparently everyone is on an equal playing field. And it's obvious who is a combatant, who is a trainer, yada yada. Well, who am I to judge? Thing is, I stepped with Prim into a line, and it turns out it was the line for trainers and combatants. I realized that too late, and well, I was a little embarrassed and just put Prim on the list. He was disappointed, but he is my butler and he has to do what I say. Yeah, about that. How did he become your butler? Huh? Lucifer took another bite of his food to allow him to think a little bit longer. Actually, I don't quite remember. I think it was around 1895. At the time we were looking for a nanny because Lilith and I were trying for a child. Prim was the most promising one. Considering he was the only other person in the entire castle, that sounded like an understatement. Though he specifically wrote in his contract that he only works here as long as it entertains him. Well, I'm not sure what that means. I think that's just his way of saying he works here forever. After that, the conversation drifted off to you, which was actually quite embarrassing. To you. Compared to Lucifer, you're practically a child age-wise. Your real life was quite normal until middle school, when various illnesses struck down all four of your grandparents one by one. Being confronted with so much death during your middle school time had laid heavy on you, and you became a delinquent, which later in your life turned into an avalanche of misfortune. Lucifer listened to your story with great interest. However, he usually only got to see the actions of demons in hell and read up on the reasons why the souls were down here to begin with. It was rare he actually got to hear the why behind it all. For a moment, Lucifer thought about the Hasbin Hotel his daughter had set up. As little hope as he had for any demon currently residing there, he felt like he understood her reasoning just a tiny bit more now. And actually, he started liking you. It was halfway through your shared meal you realized that the reason Preminger had so much food prepared was because of you, most likely. You had a great appetite, and while still a lot was left over at the end, you definitely ate triple of what Lucifer ate. Man, he really was one hell of a butler, able to plan your suddenly being here, as well as being able to tell how much food you devour normally. By the time desserts came, the two of you had stopped talking and just stared at each other with dumb smiles. Something just had clicked between the two of you, somewhere between telling which stories in the Bible were over-exaggerated, which were true, and which were really close to the real thing but still quite off, and you talking about your time as a gladiator, like when you broke a guy's neck with your massive thighs, and how you broke the pelvis of one of your former master's house guests during an orgy. Dinner's almost over, lamented the fallen angel. Time went by so fast. Luckily, you quickly realized that he was about to fold, so you interjected, placing a hand on his. I mean, it doesn't matter if dinner's over. I'm your property now, aren't I? Lucifer's face instantly brightened up. All right, I almost forgot. His dumb grin was infectious. He thought cartoonishly loud. Well, I liked how you carried that pig earlier. Mind carrying me? You chuckled. Of course I can carry you, my lord. Slowly you stood up, walked up next to him, and, like a child, he held onto your shoulders as you picked him up, bridal style. His face flushed, exhaling through his mouth. He was a shivering little mess. Of course, he knew he was more powerful than you. A snap of his finger was enough to reduce you to ashes. And you knew that your continued existence was only allowed by him. But as he pushed his head against your massive, soft chest, he couldn't help but feel safe. Mommy. What? His mind was racing. How about I show you where my room is? And what are we gonna do there? Take you for a ride? You smirked. He said that without thinking. Yeah, I think that sounds perfect. As you left the dining room, you pulled him further up in your arms, allowing him to kiss you. Your lips touching hungrily and needy. Your lips sucking and slurping as your fingers massaged the cheeks of his ass. For a moment, he tore himself off of you. He was breathing heavily, tongue lolling out of his mouth. Go left. Oh God, what a woman, he thought. Before shoving his mouth and tongue back onto your mouth. It was once your organs touched that he realized how much he had needed this after the divorce. And he would definitely not let you sleep tonight. Hey, thank you for watching my video until the very end. I'm very grateful for that, and I would like to ask you to please share the video around on social media so more people can see it. And that's it really. But before we say goodbye, I would like to say thank you to all of my lovely channel members who so lovingly support me. We have Giovanni Moriarty, Twilight Mia, Zoe, Angel, Angry Boxman, Hella, BitBit, Melofia, Anonymous Weep, Zachary, Nicodemus D, and Valerie Wings. Thank you for being wonderful, darling stewards. And of course, let's not forget all of my other lovely darlings who support me. Thank you for your support. It is greatly appreciated. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.